I'm sometimes surprised that people don't understand the difference between their MLS and their AOR, so hopefully you know that. Quick introduction for myself. Prior to taking this position, I was a litigator and trial attorney, practicing a lot of real estate matters, commercial litigation. Prior to law school, I was an agent, practicing agent for about 12 years in the LAOC, Riverside County areas. Even branched out a little bit into LA and San Diego, but wherever the deals were, right? And prior to that, I was a builder, contractor. So what does that mean? Means I've done many dark and terrible things. Also a glutton for punishment. But anyway, I try to bring an agent-centric approach, try to bring a broader understanding and an empathy for what you guys are going through to my job. So yes, I am in charge of enforcing the rules for the MLS. Yes.
He's the one.
Yes.
Get him.
Do we need a bulletproof chicken wire or something? What rules? Excellent. Excellent. I love that. There are rules. But real quick, I want to tell you a little bit about CRMLS because it's important. So who are we? Again, we are your MLS. We are the biggest MLS in America. Our stakeholders are 38 participating AORs and BORs, including South Bay. We have approximately, including all of those listings from the AORs, that membership, we also have 18 data shares. You guys know what a data share is? Okay, so that is a data feed from other MLSs whereby you can see their listings and enter into deals for compensation. We also have reciprocal agreements where you have to separate logins. So that covers quite a bit of area as well. If you notice, if you're looking for a vacation home in Honolulu, you can log in to the Honolulu MLS and look there. So it actually amounts to about 75% of the listings in the state of California are available to you to make offers on, to enter into, again, deals for compensation. So the blue is our service area, the various shades of blue. Some people ask me, well, do you want to see the whole state blue? And the answer would be yes, but not because of self-interest, but because we believe in the value and the long-term benefits of a contiguous database for all of California. It can get a little messy, right? When you've got overlapping MLSs, people having to enter in listings 4 and 5 times to get the exposure that they're looking for versus one. So again, when you put your listing into our service, you're getting about 143,000 real estate professionals who are seeing your listings. The white areas are not our service areas, but I tend to think that there's not a lot of business out there, so I'm not sure where they are. Okay, so favorite topic, rules and regulations. Has anybody ever read the MLS rules? Look at that. All 54 pages? Wow. Oh, good. Good. MLS committee, maybe. We do have rules. Where do they come from? Do we make them up on our own in isolation because we just love to do that? No, we don't. They come down to us through the NAR and CAR model rules. Okay, so they're starting at a national level, filtering through the state association, coming down to us, where they are basically gone through at times and approved by the CRMLS Rules Committee. Has anybody ever heard of the Rules Committee? There you go. Are you the rules rep? There he is. What is that? That is the committee that governs the rules and basically also has sort of a jurisdiction over the compliance department. It's made up of one representative from every association, which are our stakeholders. So there's a democratic process through which you can filter up or bubble up, as some people say, your ideas, your complaints, your questions, gripes. I don't like how much this fine is. I don't like this rule. Talk to this gentleman right here. What's your name?
Dave.
Dave. Dave is your man. Dave can get that in front of the Rules Committee. I saw you on Monday, or last week. That's right. So, and I also attend the Rules Committee meetings, and there are some very, very quality people, smart people, practitioners who are in there advocating for their associations and debating these issues and figuring out if the rules that are being proposed or the rules that are in effect are workable, if it's a problem or not. So that's how that comes to pass, and then ultimately all the rules that we use are approved by the CRMLS Board of Directors, which is again made up of association reps, large and small brokers, and then other players in the real estate industry, Freudian slip. So that's where it comes from, okay? So the rules that we're enforcing on you guys on a day-to-day basis, if you've ever had an enforcement action, we are not existing independently of the real estate practicing community. We are just an extension of the ideas and will, so to speak, of your peers at various levels, national, state, and local, and through your associations. So, is that an excuse for all the things we do? I'd like to think so. Yeah, you can yell at us, but point at your friends here. They're the ones who are making up these rules. I'm just kidding. We have a lot of information available for you guys if you ever want to just spend some time on our website, crmls.org. Rules are there. The citation policy, which is the list of things that we actually cite for. There's a knowledge base. There's FAQs. There's videos. There's a lot of articles. There is a wealth of information in there. I'm not saying you have to study it all, but I would recommend at a minimum you pull the citation policy. It's only 2 pages. The rules are 54 pages, 220 rules. We only enforce about 67 of them, and those are included in the citation policy. Print it out, pin it on your cork board, or throw it in your drawer or something. Just kind of be aware of the things that are actively being looked for or looked at. This is our compliance center. Again, you can see all the icons down there. We have our live chat, which is how you interact with compliance. This is a sample from the citation policy. Okay, you can see there's the rule number, whether or not it comes with a warning. Then you've got a small explanation of the rule and the wonderful fine on the far right. So real quick, and then we'll get into the photo stuff. I want you to understand what compliance does on a daily basis, the life cycle. We get reports, okay? Has anybody ever seen that blue link at the bottom of a listing that says if you think you see a violation on this listing, click here? Anybody ever clicked on it? All right, good job. We get about 3,000 of those a month. Yeah. Every one of them is a little mini investigation, potentially into a bigger investigation. So in my department, we have trained analysts. I've got some really good people in there, former escrow officers, former agents, former TCs, people who know the business. I've got a Marine who is one of my leads, and he's a very no-nonsense guy, but we're working on him. Everyone that comes in goes to it could go to an inquiry stage. And this is where we take a look at the report that has come in. We'll check some initial facts and see, is this potentially a violation? Should we go any further? If we do, and we find sufficient grounds that a rule has been violated, if it's a rule that gets a warning notice will go out. And everything comes out via email. You guys are aware that you have to have a working, active, and regularly monitored email on roster, correct? Okay. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. If it's not a warning rule, it will go to a citation. And that will also come to you via email, be CC'd to your broker. All of our notices actually are CC'd to your broker in your AOR, and office manager if it's on the roster. Citation goes out. Once the citation goes out, you have 2 options. You can pay the citation or ask for a review. Okay, sort of like an appeal. And that has to happen within 20 days. If you don't do, and we can get into that a little bit further, but I want to focus on the media issues. But if you don't do that after 20 days, then you would be subject to a suspension. Okay? It usually is 20 days plus a couple, but definitely pay attention to those notices and the times on there. So that's the life cycle. Let's see. There we go. Again, this is the little blue button at the bottom of the matrix listing where you would click. This is the report violation window, so there's a little drop-down menu. that sort of has a bunch of categories of things that you might see, like, hey, there's the agent's name and advertising is in the photos, or hey, that's my picture and I didn't get permission, these kind of things. You can type in a little explanation of what's going on, you click that through, and that becomes one of our 3,000 a month. We also get emails to compliance.org. So people ask me, well, what do I do if I see something going on that's not on the MLS, such as what? Like coming soons or things like that. So you can take a picture or just type in a report and send it in to our email, and we'll check it out and go from there. We also get AOR staff initiating certain, very few, but a few different kind of reports where a member will call in directly to the staff and say, hey, I saw this, and then they'll forward it over to us. And then there's staff initiated, which means someone on the team, one of the analysts was investigating a report and saw something else. So we try to be careful about that. Stats, how are we dealing with these 3,000? Well, a couple of good things. 22% are duplicates. And what does that mean? It means maybe more than one of you saw the same thing, so we'll sort those out. Or you saw something and we didn't fix it in 4 hours, and so you click it again, and click it again and again. So we sort those out as well. That's a pretty big number. No violation means whatever it is that you saw is actually not either within our citation policy or it simply wasn't a violation. So between those two, that's a pretty big amount, and then the biggest amount is corrected. Okay, and this is good news. So let's say a warning goes out and you have 2 business days to fix something. Most times it's getting fixed. Oftentimes we'll look at something and it's already been fixed, okay, before we even get to it. So if it's a no photo, right, under the rules you have 5 calendar days to get your 1 photo up, minimum 1 photo. Somebody will report it on the 2nd day. We'll get to it, maybe on the 6th or 7th day, and the photo's there. So that's corrected. So that's the majority of them, the overwhelming majority. About 14% of the reports end up in an actual citation with a fine. About 2 of those, 2% of all of the reports end up in a citation review, where people, you don't agree with the facts that we found, or you find that, or you have mitigating circumstances, or something else happened that you believe should relieve you of the responsibility for that citation and fine. And there's a whole process with that. You can go through that process simply by clicking on our compliance page, request a review. It's a simple button. It takes about 2 minutes to fill this thing out. If you got a citation, you request a review, your 20 days stops. Okay? Everything goes to normal. You're working. You're not facing any suspension until we get all the way through that process and a hearing outcome is arrived at from a pro standards committee. So that's a good way to hit the pause button, but we want to see credible challenges as opposed to something that's sort of frivolous. But it's there for you. It's good due process. I personally do the hearings. I found that the pro standards panels and the grievance committee at every association I've worked with are very quality, and they'll give you a full evidentiary hearing and listen to everything you have to say. That doesn't, after the citation goes out though, remember that in compliance we're not going to get into any further evidentiary arguments or consider any of the merits of your reasons. So that's why we leave that to pro standards. That's how that works. Any questions on what we do or how we're doing it? Did you know any of this? Some. All right. Good. Well, I'm always happy to teach this stuff because people get surprised. So what kind of violations are we seeing? This is basically the top 5 or 6, and these almost never change. And usually at the top is branding, which is in your photo or your video, you've got personal information, contact information. Okay, your sign is the most likely. That is a no warning citation. It's $100, and that's a pretty big chunk of what we do. Inaccurate information. Under Rule 8.3, you're responsible to have as accurate as information as you can reasonably get in your listing. That one comes with a warning. So that's a huge amount of our corrections. People they forget to put the AP in. They get the wrong room count. The other agents in the area are looking at that listing and say, no, I know that model. That's not the square footage on that. That's not that school district, those kind of things. So we'll send you out a quick warning email, you go in and fix it, no harm, no foul. Failure to correct, now, you do have to understand that because we're responsible for keeping the data clean, that it's not just enough to pay your citation, you have to fix it, right? Because that's the goal here. So generally, either if it's in a warning or a citation, you have 2 business days to correct whatever's going on. If you don't, it is in the rules in Rule 14.4 that we can issue a second, all-new, standalone citation for failure to correct. That is basically us saying, please understand what we're doing here, we need you to fix this. So those are about 11%. We also can issue those to the brokers under certain circumstances. We can talk more about that if you like, but definitely there is the possibility of a second citation if you're not being diligent about adhering to the rules. Failure to input listing or exclude is about 6%. We know that the rule is within 2 business days of the effective date of the listing agreement, you have to have your listing into the MLS or file an appropriate exclusion form. This gets a little bit complicated. There are a couple of different forms to use. Yes?
I was always curious if you took the listing on a Saturday but didn't want to have it effective until, Friday of the next week. So you could date it April 1st and then the term could be April 8th through whatever.
Yeah, I think what the question is
2 days of the actual term, right? From to.
let me explain how the clock works. I said the effective date of the listing agreement. Does anybody know what that is? Which is the date of the final necessary signature or the date of the listing period, whichever is later. So if you sign your listing agreement with your folks on Saturday, but the listing period as set forth in the RLA is not till the next Saturday, then that Saturday is the effective date. So you would have 2 business days to get it in from there. We can talk about all this in depth because it does go into some things about days on market, what is marketing, how do we deal with people who are taking listings, not putting them in the MLS timely, or filing an exclusion form and out there marketing it. We get a lot of those reports. I will tell you the short version is if you break that rule, we're going to start your days on market from the effective date of that listing agreement. Okay? Even if you haven't entered it in the MLS yet. It's a big thing. Agents don't like that. So we deal with that. Misuse of public remarks. This is kind of, you're saying things that do not belong in the public remarks, such as property status, vacant, gate codes, right? Silly things like, please don't show before 5 p.m. because only the kids are home. We've seen some doozies. My favorite one was down in San Diego. One of the members told me that she saw one that says, elderly owner, hard of hearing, sleeps during the day, please knock loudly and then just go on in. So I didn't get to cite that, but I sure would have. And then conditional compensation, this is a sort of on the rise, where this is where you're making conditions on paying what you're advertising as the BAC. A lot of builders do this, must accompany buyer on the first visit, that kind of a thing. It's going to be case-by-case basis, but we look at that. Something along the lines of, Jane's brokerage, you only get 1% because that's what you pay. We see that. So you can't put conditions on the compensation that you put in the BAC field. All right, so what are we doing? Oh, we don't need all that. Okay, so now to the meat of the issue that we're here to talk about today. So, photographs in the MLS. There's a number of rules involved. Some of them are more important than others, but I'm going to just cover all of the rules that touch on photos, and if you have any questions at all, just shoot them out, okay? So, the first photo rule is you can't, yes, certainly.
not going on MLS at all, and it's a pocket listing or something like that, where does that fall into timeframes and the type of advertising that you can do? You can't put it on Craigslist, right?
You're getting into a pretty broad question. The question is what about pocket listings and things? So that would fall under the scope of Rule 7.8. So if you are a CRMLS user, you've agreed to follow rules. 7.8 says 2 business days after the effective date of the listing agreement, you will either put your listing into the MLS or file the proper exclusion form. So if we find out, and we basically just find out from you guys out there, hey, I saw this sign, my buyer said I wanted to see it, I went on the MLS, it's not there. I happen to know that that sign's been there for 2 weeks. So we check it out, we reach out to the listing agent, hey, we've noticed this is a report we got. Do you have an exclusion form, right? Or the listing agreement? Can you just tell us what's going on? And at that point, they could say, yeah, I filed an exclusion form. So we go into our records and we see that they did. So now they have properly excluded it from the 2-day rule. How it affects their days on market when they eventually come into the MLS depends on what exclusion form they used and which box they checked and a few other things. Pocket listings, I mean, that's a term. We would prefer to use the term off MLS marketing, right? So I'm not sure which specific aspect of this you're asking about. Can you narrow it down a little bit more?
So how much advertising can you do that is non-MLS with a listing like that, where it's not ever going to go on the MLS?
If it's never going to go on the MLS, and you want to advertise it, you have an exclusion form, the reality is that we can't really do anything about that until it comes on. Because if you have an exclusion form, your seller says, I don't want it on the MLS, then that's their call. What'll happen is, if you were marketing it, and you do eventually come into the MLS, we're going to count the days on market from the effective date. Does that make sense? So if they want to exclude it, and they just want to advertise it on their own, I mean, that's their call, right? The SELM form that you would use has a bunch of disclosures and disclaimers in there telling the sellers, here's what this means if you don't put it on the MLS, you're going to get less exposure and things like that. So that's between you and your seller. But if they file the proper exclusion form, they can do that. The key is what we're most concerned with is, did you get it in within 2 days or file the exclusion form, and when it comes into the MLS, we want the accurate days on market, because that's about the data. Does that answer that? Yeah? We'll talk further about it afterwards. We can certainly do that. Anything else on that one? Usually there is, but that's okay. So again, the first rule affecting photographs is branding. You simply can't have certain things in your photos. The photos are there to display the property, right? Not to become an advertisement for you, so that when a buyer's agent sends out that listing to someone, the buyer clicks on it and sees, oh, there's the listing agent's face in the first photo. Yeah, we can't do that. Phone numbers, website addresses, email addresses, for sale signs, and again, this is the absolute leader in this. You know, you got your sign installed. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, other MLSs allow payment so that you can do that? I'm assuming CRMLS does not.
We do not. The question is, does CRMLS allow a certain payment which allows you to put branded or personal contact information in your media? And I'm not familiar with that process. First I've ever heard of it, but I can tell you that's not something we do. He's from what? Oh, one of those white areas, yeah. The Wild West. Yeah, message or solicitations, images of people, animals, or basically anything that's not connected to the property, right? So when I say animals, does that mean that if you're selling horse property, you can't have the horses in the corral out there? Of course not. That's sort of incidental and connected to the property. But if you have, what's that? No, good luck. Chasing chickens around to get them out. We don't want you guys to have to do that. But if you fall in love with this one horse and you think, everybody's going to love this mare, so I'm going to put her face, the first photo. She doesn't come with a house. And even if she did, it's not related to the actual real property that's being sold. So I'll give you a couple of examples. The first top left was the first photo in this particular agent's media, and I've blocked out his handsome face and a couple of the contact information, but it was Kirk. So no doubt about who was listing this property when the buyers were getting this from their agents. So this one got reported and taken down real quick. Center bottom, you see the watermarks at the bottom? Hopefully you can all see that. When a photo goes into an MLS, generally that MLS will put a watermark to indicate that it is part of their copyright compilation. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But this particular photo had 3 separate watermarks, which means it had been copied at least twice from other MLSs. That's not allowed, that's under a copyright, but it also borders on sort of a branding information that shouldn't be in the photo. We probably take it easy on this person and do the $100 fine as opposed to the $1,500 fine. Bottom left, does anybody know what that is? QR code. Seems innocuous enough, but what happens if you click on it? Or if you have a scanner and it goes to your website? That is branding, right? So you can't have anything in there that's tricky and leads someone out to something that is improper either. And we do have a scanner that we check those. So we are actually seeing those put in the photos. Again, not a great feature of the property, this fudge mark or whatever it is. This is one of my personal favorites. This particular agent sent in the original photo without the cartoon faces on the dogs or the people, and it got cited because you can't have people or pets, animals like that in your photos. So rather than take it down, they were determined that this lake and kayaking amenity was important to the sale, so they created these cartoon characters and put it on there, and the comment says, the MLS doesn't allow people in photos, so hence the cartoon faces, picture yourself here. I like the tenacity, but it got another citation. So, yeah. Hey, we explained it. We explained it. You know what, I take it back. I didn't process that case personally, so there is a chance that somebody just laughed it off. I wouldn't, but just so you know, especially when the rule has been explained in the citation process to you, seems like a little bit of pushing your luck. Some other branding issues, these are some great ones. Top left, not an accurate representation of what's being sold, unless you're selling in Toontown. It makes me happy to look at it, but that's got to go. Center top is one of my other favorites, Salesperson of the Year, 1974. Don't stall, call, whatever, Saul or Paul or something. Begs the question, what were you doing the other 45 years? Top right, the swimmer. You can't have people in your photos, and you can't have naked people. The sunglasses and the sun were added by us for this presentation. The original photo was au naturel, so to speak. Yeah, not sure whose idea that was. Bottom left, it's hard to see from here, you guys, but sitting on the toilet through the crack in the door is an individual. Yeah, we call that one the thinker. Right. Center bottom photo is a picture that's been edited as unclad woman holding a firearm in this photo. That is only one of the pictures within this particular room. There was a sort of a panorama shot with several art pieces of this type, and you can't have that. Bottom right, Brenna's favorite, the panda guy. You can't have people or animals, hence you cannot have people or animal suits. Someone thought it was clever, and I'm not saying it's not, that this would be their trademark, that this panda guy would be in all their photos for their listings. So literally every photo had him in there. Making scrambled eggs, mowing the lawn, standing by the pool, and then at the end, the last photo was him holding a sold sign, doing a dance. So we didn't cite for every photo, it was just the one. Again, clever, but outside of the rules. So that's kind of what branding is about in your photos. That's probably the easiest one to follow. If it's not the property, or it's not something that's going along with the property, there's no reason to do that, right? You can do it on your own site and things like that.
If by chance a cat is in the back,
No.
don't catch it.
Yeah.
It's so small, you're so
No.
nearsighted.
No. No, look, we understand that things like that happen.
No.
Yeah, if it's every photo, I'm going to doubt your veracity. When you think cats are good luck or something in that context. I had another example up here earlier in a different iteration of this slideshow that was a bulldog. He was adorable, laying on the concrete, and he was sort of centered, featured in the photo. And the agent's explanation was, well, I know, I wanted you to see the quality of the concrete. Didn't really hold much water with us. So incidental things, we get it, right? There's birds flying around. I mean,
Yeah.
seriously, yeah. So also you have to understand, just as with the QR code, if your links or anything lead to a branded page, that's going to be a violation as well. And something that these guys will help you out understanding later on is that branding rules apply to any landing page accessed from your listing. So if you have a video link and you want to use YouTube, that's okay. But you can't have the agent information. If you can see this, it's at the bottom. Now, this particular agent did the right thing by titling the YouTube video landing page with the address of the property. But you can't have your brokerage or your agent personal info. It's a subtle trap because YouTube asks you to name your page or give it some sort of a designation, right? Well, all you got to do is make sure that the only thing you ever enter into this thing is the address of the property, and you'll be okay. Make sure there's nothing in the video either. At the very end, there's you standing, you can't have that. A lot of photographers will offer you, professional photographers will offer you unbranded, neutral landing pages with their photo package. So I would be aware of that. That's allowable. That is not. Okay, any questions on that part? Branding, the simple rule, yeah.
Let's say you buy like a website for your property, and I know that you can't put that address on the MLS, but if you link like your virtual tour or something, and then it shows at the bottom of your website that it has your, agency name, your name, so that's not okay, you can't do that?
No, we do have syndication and branded virtual tour links, fields in Matrix. So if you have a branded virtual tour where you've paid for a production and you're walking around talking about the features of the home, and that's a good thing to do, right? You can put that link in the particular branded video field. Okay, so you have to be careful that you're entering the right stuff in the right spot. A lot of times that's what this comes down to.
It's a virtual tour area on the MLS list?
Yes.
And so that leads to your own name and stuff, that's okay then?
Well, yeah, because that particular link is not going out to someone else's buyers, right? It'll go to the portals and or syndication sites that we're sending to. Now, if those sites don't display it, that's up to them, right? But they'll have the option, you have the option to put that in there. What is that doing? I don't get it. Sorry about that. I didn't think those alerts were coming up. Okay, so the other very simple rule is one photo. So who knows how long you have after your listing goes into the MLS to get your photo in? 5 calendar days, right? Is that long enough? You would think. In these days, it's still a little surprising about how many violations we get for this. Given these amazing computer devices you all have in front of you, you should be able to get at least one photo and upload it. But it's a pretty common violation. Yes? I think it was at some point. I think that through the Paragon system and those rules, I think it's a little bit shorter. But I believe at one point our Rules Committee had voted to extend it out to 5 calendar days. Yeah. So, yeah.
I have a question. What if the agent borrowed the photos from the previous agent without contacting the agent and then used the, it says MLS MLS forward, they just copied it and forwarded it.
That's going to be a problem, and we're going to talk about that. This is pretty a narrow rule. Now, there are some exceptions. If you sell the property within 5 days, you still have to put a photo. If you cancel it within 5 days, you don't, okay? Because we still want good data in there, right, for CMAs and appraisals and things like that. Yeah,
It says exterior.
exterior of the structure,
So
at least one.
Condo, still just a picture of the big condo building?
Yeah, either one of those will suffice. My department is trained to understand what this means, substantial portion of the exterior of the property. So I've sold a lot of condos, I get it. You can either take the building, right, from the parking lot, or you can take the front door, bay window, little green belt right in front of it. Those are all fine. Okay, we understand what the exterior of the structure means. The general rule is it the property that's featured? Is it the structure that's featured in the photo? Because I'll get people who will take a picture of the backyard, the patio and patio cover and fire pit, which is a great selling feature, but you just see a little corner of the house. You know, that's not going to cut it. You just have to basically use common sense to say, am I showing the exterior of this photo? Now, it doesn't have to be the first photo. Okay, and we talked about this in rules meeting, right? This shows you how rules meeting works, the rules committee works. There was a motion that the first photo had to be an exterior front. Suffice it to say that motion didn't go past rules committee at this point because we all know that the first photo is the one that catches people's eyes, right? Well, what if you have a property that's on a hillside and the front of it, where the front door is not that great, but the view is simply, stunning. Well, you're selling the view, right? And this was the comment that was made in Rules Committee. So we're not going to make rules that are really unreasonable to that effect. You have to have just at least one. It can be the last picture. If the kitchen is amazing and you want to put that as the first photo, you can do that. Just as long as somewhere in there's an exterior. Okay? Any questions on that? Yes?
In areas like California where some homes have 360-degree views, how far can you go in the view? So let's, you know what I'm saying, like sometimes you want to show maybe more than even your particular house has.
Mm-hmm.
Can you go in that direction or?
The question is how far can you go, quote unquote, with a 360-degree view property? What I'm gathering from this is you're wondering how accurate does it have to be, the view? So in other words, if my view is here, but if I lean out and I can see down the coast, is that okay? That gets into Rule 12.10, which is true picture, okay? I would say use common sense. I'll talk a little bit about that. I'll just jump ahead right now. The most classic example I've ever seen is a condo in Long Beach. The view from the balcony, the photo, the Queen Mary looked like it was about 100 yards away. When the buyer's agent showed up, the Queen Mary was a dot on the horizon. So that is too far. So how far is too far? Well, it's going to depend. That's the lawyer answer. It's going to depend on the facts of the case. So if someone shows up expecting one thing, and it's based upon your photos, and it's completely different, and they report that, we're going to have to take a look at it, and again, that's going to just depend on the facts of what happened. Make sense? But if it's not that hard to just look to your left and look to your right and see the whole coast. Show it. Sell that thing for that reason. Move on from this. Okay. Be careful, before you move on, that your one photo rule violation does not roll into a no photo violation. What do I mean? Or your branding violation. So if you have the only photo of the exterior of your property has your sign right in the middle, and you get a citation from that, and by the way, on a branding violation, we'll just take the picture down. Well, now, what's the problem? You have no exterior photo. So we'll put that in the citation notes. We'll say, look, please put something up because we've taken this down. And it does happen where people ignore that and then they get a no photo violation. It's kind of a downward spiral, in some of these rules. Again, we're trying to keep the database accurate and up to date. This is let's see, that second bullet point was the question this gentleman asked about condos. Very astute, and we anticipate that. For land, it's all exterior, right? You can use a plat map or other public source. If you want to use a drone photo or something like that, that's fine. Careful about the copyrighted images, though, and that's where we're going to go from here. So, who has used a professional photographer for their listings? Okay, good. It's very common, almost the majority at this point. You're entering into agreements with these folks. What you need to really understand is that you've already entered into a particular agreement with the MLS in regards to the media that you're putting in there. The end user license agreement that you have signed, if you are a user of the MLS, has certain provisions that are important. By putting your media into the MLS, you are representing to us that you have certain rights, okay? That you either own or have been assigned to ownership or have the legal authority to submit to the MLS all information, text, photographs, and other media that you submit to the MLS. So you're telling us, I'm putting this in because I can, legally. It also says, by submitting your contribution to us, you're granting us a license, right? Now, as agents or real property pros, we all understand that there are certain rights that go with real property, right? Right to transfer, alienate, exclude, encumber. There is also a bundle of rights that goes along with intellectual properties or artistic works or media. And in that same context, the owner of the media can transfer to you a right to use that media. What you're telling us by putting this information into the MLS is that you're also transferring us one of your rights. Based upon B, right? I have the rights, and I'm going to give you guys some. You're not assigning absolute ownership. You are giving us a very comprehensive license. It's transferable, it's perpetual, royalty-free, irrevocable, unrestricted. This is what we need in order for us to do business, okay? Why am I bringing this up? Because we're going to move into the copyright violations, which are the more significant, the more expensive violations, and could carry responsibility and liability beyond just our rule set. In Matrix, when you're uploading your photos, you're going to get a little reminder, okay, in red. Using branded images in the MLS is prohibited, et cetera, et cetera. We've talked about that. And uploading images to the MLS requires that you have written permission to use those images, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a general reminder. Okay, you're going to see that. Hopefully you guys are all taking a look at that. What does a copyright violation look like? Just to get us in the ballpark here. Left side was a professional photograph that got reported. I don't recall if it was the original listing agent or the photographer themselves, but if we look at something and we check in, somebody says, hey, look, that's my photo. We're going to check with you and ask you for that written permission. If you don't have it, violation. Middle is a copyrighted image because Google does not, while they give you a limited license to use their images, they do not give you an extensive enough license for our purposes. So that's going to be a problem. So the Google satellite view, or we'll talk a little bit more about this on the right, the Google Street View is going to be a violation. The bottom middle is a great example of realtor creativity because we tell people if you took the photo, you own it. So this person took a photo of a photo in the MLS. I took the photo, guys. Can't get me for this. You may have not violated the letter of the law, but you have violated the spirit of the law. And at that point, you're going to get a citation. I don't know why you would do that. I mean, how hard can it be, right? But what do I know? Right side is sort of an example of realtor efficiency. Couldn't get out to the property, so right-clicked and saved a Google Street View. I think the dead giveaway is the arrow on the street. Printed it out, put the property, the public remarks, hand-printed on the white printout paper and uploaded that. So, yeah, I'm not so much worried about that. That could be how the car really is, I don't know. It's a little odd to me still that there's these shortcuts that are being taken, although I allow for the fact that real life happens, right? You get sick in the hospital or something along those lines happens. Extraordinary circumstances do occur, and just so you know, that is why we have the review process. If you have a real story, your peers will hear it. We're not going to be able to evaluate it once the citation goes out. The grievance committee and the pro standards committee are willing to listen to you. I've done so many hearings and I've seen it happen quite a number of times. Okay, we get it. That's a good story. You know, evidence supports it, those kind of things. I don't know. I don't think many of these would be, you could get out of them, but I've seen it happen. So, why is this important? What is the real world implications here? Maybe some of you know this. I know you guys do. Last fall, a desert area photographer sued Zillow for copyright infringement. Okay, what does that mean? Is that just lawyer talk? Well, remember I said you're granting us a license when you put your photos in? We need that license because we send these things out everywhere with your permission, okay? And you, as you know, or maybe you know, you can opt out of that. But they go out to Zillow through a data share and all these other MLSs, and these didn't start out in our MLS, they started out in the desert. Well, they have a stream to Zillow as well, so it got out there on Zillow. And this particular photographer took issue with it and said Zillow did not have sufficient rights to use those photos. Ultimately, we're going to find out that he was right. This is my favorite question. Does anybody know what the amount that they sued for? $84 million. Yeah, I know. Do you think they're crazy? Are they just completely being so greedy that, you know, this is terrible plaintiff lawsuits? No. Why? Well, that's part of it. They have deep pockets to go after, theoretically. But the reality is damages for copyright are predetermined by the legislature. They're in the Federal Copyright Act. Okay, federal law has already determined what it's going to cost you for each and every violation. The minimum would be $500 a photo, or let's call it photos in this case. That's for an unintentional, and it can go up to about $30,000 for unintentional. For intentional use without permission, it goes up to $150,000 per use. This case involved over 500 photos. You're the plaintiff's attorney, you do the math real quick and come up with 84 million. 500 and change times 150,000, that's what I'm asking for. Would he have gotten that? Probably not, but he would have gotten some. I mean, our determination was it was a valid suit. We don't know, oh man, we don't know exactly what it was going to be, but that's my boss. It would have been a lot, right? So we talk a little bit more about that. What was the outcome? Well, the suit was dismissed, thankfully, for Zillow. Why? Could have been any reason, but the most logical reason is this photographer understood that who he was suing was actually his own clients. Does anybody know how we get there? There's a thing in contracts called indemnity, which is a provision that you sign that says, if I do something wrong that breaches this contract, and it winds up costing you or getting you sued, I've got to pay for your lawyer fees and for your damages. So that particular MLS would have had that agreement with Zillow. So when Zillow got hit with this lawsuit, let's say they lost, they would have turned around and handed that judgment to the MLS, who would have been obligated. Now, who does that MLS have contracts with? The agents and brokers. So those particular agents whose listings included these photos would have had to indemnify the MLS. So the photographer maybe at some point says, Zillow has $84 million, but I don't think my clients do. So he's going to go through all this and drive these poor folks into bankruptcy and never get a cent and be completely out of business for the rest of his life. So not a well-thought-out strategy, in my view. But where does this whole thing start? It starts with this terrible license, okay? When you work with a photographer, presumably you're signing a contract. You're not working on oral agreements, right? Why? Because they're useless in this case. You need written authorization to put your stuff in the MLS. Remember that. But it comes down to the quality of the contract as to whether or not you're getting the proper scope of rights to use those in the MLS and therefore send them out to the world. Now, this particular contract that Mr. Gutenberg had with his agents, and this is public record, so I'm not ratting him out, starts out okay, right? It gives this agent the authority to use the photos on the MLS, but it goes downhill from there very quickly. It also limits the license to the purpose of marketing. So, what happens after a property closes? Are you marketing it anymore? No. Is it going to potentially someone else's CMA? Or is it going on one of your flyers to show your sales? Is it being used for all manner of things other than marketing that property for sale? It is, for a long time. That's a problem. The second is that it was limited to 1 year. So you've got the right to put it in the MLS, but only for 1 year. How long do your photos stay in the MLS? Forever. That's a long way short of forever. Doesn't get it done. This might be the worst. It's not transferable. Well, what was that provision I pointed out in your end user license agreement? You're giving the MLS a license. You are transferring rights by way of a license or an assignment to the MLS, and that is a violation of this agreement. So this agreement is a violation of our agreement. So this thing was DOA. This was a problem. We've reviewed dozens upon dozens of private photographer agreements, and I've not seen one that meets the needs, that matches up with our needs, and really sufficiently protects your rights for the business that you're doing. The takeaway, the most obvious takeaway, well, our perspective takeaway is never sign a written agreement that a photographer gives you. Use your own. Where do we go from there? Does anybody know what a PIA is? Property Images Agreement. Has anybody seen this? Okay. This is what CAR came up with for you. It's in zip forms. This form is enough. And it's right there for you. Use this and you will be okay. I can't make it any clearer. It doesn't really matter what your photographer hands you. I understand you might have some favorites, some pros that you work with. But we talked about the liability that's out there, the potential problems. It would be unfortunate to lose a professional relationship, but the reality is in this market there's someone else who is willing to sign this. Find another photographer. Yes?
I haven't read this contract, but does this attain, let's say you use the same photographer all the time, does this pertain to every photo they take for you if you have 10 listings in the next whatever? Or is this every single time they take photos of a property, you have to send this again, they have to sign it again, send it again, sign it again?
Good question. The question, if you didn't hear it, is can you use one of these universally, or do you need one for each listing? My view, I'm not your attorney, but I would tell you to get one for each listing. You can write one that attempts to be universal. If you have a good lawyer, they can put some provisions in there, but that's going to require some work on your part. Yeah?
It does have some language. If you look at the bottom sentence, you can identify one property, but if you leave it blank, it covers some properties from time to time.
Correct. Steve is correct. There are ways that you can do it. I'm just saying that the fail-safe way would be to get one for each property. Okay? Yes?
So we've got all these rules and regulations, but there's many hundreds of companies out there that are putting our information out, our properties out, our listings out, without our names or numbers or anything. Movado this morning has listings in there. There's no agents. It's the properties that they're selling that connected to the agents.
Okay. So the question is there's data going out everywhere, and in some cases it's not being, there's no attribution and things like that.
You're giving them a
we are giving them the license based upon the license that you give us, right? So we have syndication. It goes out to Zillow and Realtor.com and ListHub and all of those things. Your broker can just say, we don't want that. It's really simple.
Can you exclude one or the other, like if you just didn't like?
We're working on that. We expect that to have that out very soon for individual listings to be excluded. But anything that comes out from us is done so under a proper license, and it is pre-approved by your broker. Okay, we're not running away and stealing your stuff and doing anything like that. Yeah.
So Zillow does it properly, and Trulia, which is Zillow owns Trulia, and a lot of the companies that Realtor.com, but their subsidiaries like Novato, which is hooked up to Opcity, which is hooked up to Realtor.com,
Mhm.
they're putting properties up on the market, your property on the market, without your name and number and your listing, you guys.
Is it possible that these licensees are violating their license? Yeah. I'm also the director of licensing. So if you see something like that, you can report that, and we'll find out. Right. You can email to compliance@crmls.org. Okay? We'll find out. Yeah.
When I asked about excluding the listing from a particular website, I didn't mean like your broker could say, no, I don't want this particular listing to go on IDX at all.
Mhm.
What I meant was if my client didn't like Zillow and I only wanted to exclude them, is there a choice like that?
I don't think you can omit from individual vendors. Yeah. I could check with IT, but I don't think that's a capability we have right now. It's kind of a group. Yeah. The concept is to be overprotective, I guess, in that case.
They just, I mean, I did have a client that hated Zillow. He's like, oh, they put the value way too low, it's really, it'd be great.
Well, why would Zillow be putting out a value or price less than you are listing it for?
They do give you his estimate.
There's estimate, okay, that's different.
According to the view, it
Yeah.
could be 400 grand less than the value. So they were upset that
Yeah.
the was at Zillow and
Yeah.
the lower valuation.
Now, you can shut that off.
Oh, you can.
I mean, you shut it off as a grouping. But I would encourage you, on our website, there's an entire syndication page. You can find out where your listings are going. You can talk to your broker, make sure that they understand what's going on with their listings. It's key that you understand what's going on with your data, and we're not hiding anything. It's all on there for you to see. Okay? Back to the PIA. What I'm saying to you is this will protect your rights for your own uses and for purposes of the MLS. There's a step beyond this that we can go, and this is something that we've developed in CRMLS on our own. And this is the CRMLS photographer list. Does anybody know about this? Okay. So, what this is a list of photographers who have signed an independent licensing agreement with CRMLS. They are the owners of these photos, and they are saying to the MLS, I'm giving you this license. And we drafted this agreement ourselves, and we know that what they're giving us is sufficient to protect us from copyright violations, and accordingly they protect you. Here's why. You're not the ones uploading the photos. Because once these people get approved, they're part of a new user class we developed, the PH user class. They become a user. They can only access photo uploads. So, you pick a photographer from this list. You do business with them, sign your PIA, right? They're approved with us. You upload your listing. When it comes time to upload the photos, you click your photographer button in Matrix, sends the photographer an email, says time to upload the photos. Photographer uploads them independent of you. You are out of the liability loop as far as the CRMLS is concerned. So from there, wherever those photos go, it has no blowback on you. It's working out very well. Yeah.
Is this on the CRMLS app, the mobile app?
I don't know. That's a good question. The question was, is that on the CRMLS app? And I'm actually not sure. I apologize. It is on our website. Bottom right, photographer list. This is absolutely free to these photographers. Costs them nothing. They get a little promotional piece on the list. We're up to over 180 photographers now. You can select them by county or region so that it'll sort the list for you to look through. They get this, and they get in the listing itself, you know how it says selling agent, listing broker, that kind of thing. It also have a little blue field that says photographer. So they get a little bit of attribution in the listing itself. So this was done in order to address the concerns of the photographers because their photos were going, all over the world. They were concerned about being protected and getting attribution. So we tried to solve a number of problems with this. We tried to solve that, as well as to set up something where you guys wouldn't have to do anything in terms of being responsible for the media that's being put into your listings. Does that make sense? It's working out very well, as I said. I know our presenters today are on that list, so you could talk to them about how that might be working out. This is the licensing agreement that Ed and I wrote. It's very, very protective of us. Don't get me wrong, but we've not had anybody refuse to sign it yet. Okay? Because it becomes a little bit of a selling feature, right? That photographer says, I'm CRMLS approved, right? It goes on their business card or something. How do you submit that? You click on that photographer list button on our website. It takes a couple of minutes for your photographer to enter that information in those fields, and my licensing department will usually get that turned around within a couple of weeks. Again, no cost, only benefits, win-win situation, and again, it's working out really well. Any questions on that? Okay, so good news, right? The knowledge base has a particularly detailed article on how to use photographs in the MLS. Recommend you maybe just check that out. That'll answer a lot of questions. Our FAQ has multiple specific questions answered on how to use photos in the MLS. All of these things we've covered. The final aspect regarding the photos is what we talked about with the Queen Mary picture and the 360-degree view. It's true picture. Okay, so Rule 12.10 has recently been modified to include internet content and images. So your images can't be false advertising. There are a number of things that come up here. The obvious examples, right? Misrepresenting the view. You can misrepresent a lot of things about a property, right? Because we have Photoshop, we have digital staging, right? Things like this. What can you do and what can you not do? Well, whatever you put in there had better be what's being sold with the property. So if you digitally stage it with couches and things, that's fine. You're not buying the personal property, or you're not selling it. But if you put built-in bookshelves and a carriage house garage door and a new door in a window, I mean, you could do all these things with Photoshop and staging, and then somebody comes up and says, well, that's not there. Is it going to be there when I buy it? Well, no, but we just wanted to dress it up. Well, that's a problem. So that's going to be, sounds like false advertising to me, right? Okay, so that's basically just make sure that you are not, subsection E, misleading consumers, including the use of misleading images. So that's the scope of our photo rules. I've covered a lot, so we're going to leave a little bit of time for some questions, some more questions. Yeah?
I'm sorry, just quickly, people include like a picture of the pier or a picture of the lighthouse.
Ah, yeah.
That you can't see from the house.
Mhm.
Is that a violation?
It kind of is, yeah, because that's not going with the house. What we suggest is you just use your captions under your photos, right? If it's an HOA amenity, just put HOA amenity. Or if it's a lighthouse down the street, local lighthouse, right? It just covers you. I mean, I doubt that anybody who would reasonably think, oh, I'm buying a lighthouse too. Don't count on reason being ruling the day. Blueprints is fine because, again, that's an accurate representation of the real property that's being sold, right? If you put up a floor plan, it's the same concept. I don't know why you wouldn't put that in the supplements, because it's sort of a forensic document that you want people to think about more in depth. But, yeah?
But the public couldn't see the floor plan or something.
No, I mean the blueprints. I mean, blueprints are extensive, right? Floor plan is fine, as long as it's accurate. Okay? So I think that one's a fairly common sense rule, but realtors are creative. I don't know. We'll see. Any more questions on any of the items I've covered? Yeah, Mr. Dave.
Thank you. So I don't have a photographer who is
70 images and I choose 30 that I want to use. But it sounds like in this case, he's going to upload all 70.
No. You have a relationship with this photographer. So you're going to talk and say, hey, Beth, these are the 30 that I like. So when I send you the email, you load those. Right? So you have a business relationship. It's not a blind trust kind of a thing. So does that make sense? Yeah, I mean, you can certainly have them upload all 70. But again, the presumption is you're picking the photos and the photographer is simply doing the upload after they're editing or whatever. Yeah.
So the PIA basically covers you without having to do any of the photographer on the CRMLS? It'll...
Yeah, you don't have to do both. You don't have to do both, because the PIA is an agreement between you and either the photographer or whoever the creator of the image is. Because you've got to remember, it could be someone else, right? Let me back up, because let me take 5 more minutes, and I'm going to talk about, because I believe you raised this earlier about taking photos from the MLS. For some reason, my slide didn't show up. Either the person takes the photo, is the owner, or let's talk about how you get permission and when you would need permission. If you took the photos, you don't need permission, because under the law and the theories behind the laws, you're the owner. How else would you get photos? We know that photographers, you could get them from there. Your seller could give you photos, right? You're going to need written permission from the seller, because you need to protect yourself that they didn't take them. And if they did, if you have the PIA in place, it's not your fraud. It would be theirs. I hesitate to use that word, but it's kind of a species of fraud. The other thing would be, as this lady pointed out, you might right-click and save photos from the MLS and use them as your own. Unless you have, well, first of all, don't do that, because those particular JPEGs belong to the MLS. Does that mean we own your photo? No. It just means we own those ones with the watermarks on them. Why is that? Because we have to turn our entire compilation every year to the U.S. Copyright Office, and it includes everything that's in there. So we are telling the Copyright Office we have the rights to copyright this. If you have that original photo on your desktop, just use that one. Okay? Don't borrow them from the MLS. Even if you get the permission of the previous broker, it's going to be an issue. It doesn't happen very often. If you want to use photos from another agent's listing because they were fantastic, amenities or whatever, you can do that. Just get written permission from that owner of those properties. Make sense? So you have to be proactive with this. You have to make sure things are in place before you act, because it's hard to get forgiveness in this context, because again, the potential liabilities are too great for us to play around with. It's not good for any of us. Yeah.
It happened to me.
Oh.
Another agent borrowed my pictures.
Borrowed.
I look at it, it's my photos, so I compared it with my original, it is.
Mm-hmm.
So that really upset me.
Did you report it to us?
Yeah, I did. I haven't gotten a response from you yet.
Well, here's the thing about a response. Because this whole thing is confidential, we're not going to tell you, this might bother you a little bit, we're not allowed to tell you exactly what happened. But we will follow through and we'll get the job done. You'll get certain responses from us that are either there was no violation, or it's been assigned to an analyst, or it might be something that is outside of the scope of what we do, but maybe you should call your AOR, right, ethics and stuff, because we don't do that. So if that happened, I'd say there's a pretty good chance that person got cited. Then it's a $1,500, no warning citation. Yeah.
So clarification, so can you use pictures from the MLS and put it on your Facebook campaign ads, things like that?
The question is about social media, and this is a different category. I'm happy to talk about it without going, I think, a couple more minutes and that's it. You can do certain things in social media with your listings or with other people's listings. And what it comes down to, actually I think I have some slides here. We don't want to do these, we don't want to do these. That's exclusions. Here we go. Bam. key here with advertising and social media is consent, okay? If it's yours, if it's your listing, you can do whatever you want. Doesn't get any simpler than that. Is that what you're referring to? No. Okay. If it's someone else's listing, you need permission. Rule 12.8 is very clear. You're not allowed to advertise somebody else's listing without permission. Where does permission come from? Is there any pre-consent? Yes, there is. So when you enter your listings in the MLS, there are certain things that you already are consenting to, such as an IDX feed. Does anybody know what an IDX feed is? Does anybody have a website, their own personal website, or have a broker with a website? Are you showing listings on this? Other people's listings? This person has an IDX feed, that's free from CRMLS. If you want to build a website, you send us a license request, you can get listings. And then your clients can search listings and do all that fun stuff. Everybody who puts their listings into our system has consented to that already. It's just part of the deal. So, where does that leave the social media thing? Well, we have to be a little bit adaptable because these rules were written a ways before social media was where it's at now. So we play catch up a little bit. But the basic rule is if your social media advertising links to an IDX compliant site, it's okay. I'll give you a demonstration. Example of a compliant post. So I just created this goofy little CRMLS test page for Facebook. This was actually my boss's house he was selling. I found it on the KW site. Click the link that said share on Facebook, right, and put it to my page. So if you click on this in the Facebook feed, it'll take you to that IDX compliant site. That is fine. Does that make sense?
So if we have an agent on our team who's doing an open house for another broker or whatever, and we want to print flyers or post that particular flyer on Facebook to advertise that open house, is there a particular contract we should have that other agent sign saying it is okay to do this, that, or the other?
Good question. So the question is what if I'm doing an open house for somebody else and I want to promote it on social media and in print media? The print media rules are a little bit different. But if you can do your advertising on social media with a link to a compliant, IDX compliant page, you're okay to do that. Okay? When it comes to print advertising, it's a little different. You have to make sure that you give attribution to the listing agent. And I want to make sure that you understand something. Rule 12.10, the false advertising rule, is always in play on your advertising. What we're most concerned about is you don't misrepresent your relationship to the property. If that consumer thinks you're the listing agent, you've got a problem. Okay? Because unless you have permission, right? And is there a particular form this gentleman asked? Not really, but I mean, you get it in writing. Broker X says, I give John permission to advertise my listing in this particular flyer, and we go from there. So if you don't have pre-consent, you need to get independent written consent. We're working with guidelines here because social media, again, is so adaptable and moving so quickly. Just focus on whether you have existing consent, or if you don't need it because it's your listing, or when we get into the print advertising rules, we can talk about that. So this works with Twitter too, okay? You can put it on Twitter, you can put it on Facebook, you can do any of those things, link it to an IDX site, either someone else's broker or yours, preferably, right? Yeah.
So if on Facebook we post a photo of a flyer that doesn't take you anywhere, it's just the flyer, so it has pictures,
Yeah.
information, the bedrooms, bathrooms, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, that's going to be a problem. You're going to need consent for that. Because I can't click out from there to anywhere that's compliant. So I'll give you an example. So this is a ad that this agent did in Facebook. There is no link. Okay? And there's information. It's a free-form created ad. So I don't know. This wasn't reported. I just found it. I don't know if there's permission given here. But there would need to be. So anything that's not taking you to an IDX compliant place is going to need permission. Because the only pre-consent is for IDX feed. Is that too complex, or does that break it down simply? Yeah,
Is there a rule against overuse of emojis?
overuse of emojis. I don't know, I mean, that's just how the kids do things these days, right? Popsicles, I like it, or suckers, or whatever those are. Yeah.
So same with this example here, and it doesn't have that IDX site, what is going to give the other agent courtesy from the,
Oh, like attribution.
yeah.
That's nice, but it doesn't mean you have permission. It's not the same thing. I don't know, I mean, because maybe I don't want that. Even if you give me attribution, maybe I just don't want you advertising it, right? So you gotta be straight up and deal with the other person whose listing it is. So that's the social media scope, and it. Mhm. Yeah, it's be case by case basis, but yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, that's good. Again, if it's, hey, I was thinking about making a flyer, what would you think? Well, that might be okay. That's not good enough, right? So, you gotta be careful. When I give solid answers to you guys, sometimes there's loopholes you're thinking about. So anyway, 12.10 is always in play, true picture, be honest, don't misrepresent that you're the listing agent. Quickly, try to use your social media in a way that's accessible to us. We need to, as compliance, be able to audit this ad. Therefore, things like Snapchat is not okay, because it's gone, right? I don't know how you'd ever get reported and caught, but I mean, and this has actually never happened. But I'm just saying that the general principle is it should be accessible. Now, I understand that some of you want your social media pages to be private, right, for security reasons, or I've had a lot of things come up, various things, and we'll take that into consideration. But if you can, it should be accessible so that compliance can view it, if someone makes a report. And then, we'll go from there. Very quickly, since you touched on it, print advertising, you always need consent, unless you have what we call the neighborhood market report. Does anybody know what that is? It's just what it sounds like, right? You make a flyer, current activity in that area, actives, hold, close, whatever, prices, certain features of the property. That has also been pre-consented to. There are two ways to get pre-consent, IDX and a neighborhood market report. Again, the rules are not necessarily evolving at a rapid enough pace to consider every type of flyer, but I think if you operate in with this general understanding, there are certain things that are pre-consented to and other things that I need permission for, be straight up about it, you should be okay. Here's an example of a non-compliant NMR. Number one, the active listing has no attribution. One of the rules in section 12.8 is if you use active or on-market status properties in your NMR, you must give visible attribution in a certain type, and I won't quote the rule for you, to that listing broker. Okay, you have to do that. The other thing is there's only certain things that you can include. And this is non-compliant because he's got net sold price of list price percentage, he's got buyer credits in there, the contract date, all very interesting, but not within the scope of the rule. And not really necessary to do what you're trying to do here, which is give someone the understanding of what's happening in their market. And then no disclosure as required by 12.9. If you read the rule carefully, when you put out an NMR, there's a disclosure at the bottom that we've already pre-written for you. It's basically, this was taken from the MLS and don't blame me if it's not right. I mean, it's just kind of a lawyerly thing. It's not very difficult. It's pretty straight up. So that's what we have in place for all of these situations. You have a follow-up? Yeah.
So you said that you need to give attribution to the listing brokerage, not necessarily listing agent. So you could put Remax listing.
Well, look, That's a technicality. I would say you need to give attribution for the listing broker at a minimum, whatever the office name is. And if you're going to be doing this with full transparency, the agent should be in there as well. Okay, so, on print marketing, yeah. Yeah.
Legal market is not permissible.
It is not within the scope of our rule. It is not. I know, it's a little odd. Yeah, but here's the other thing you guys got to know, and this is me jumping out of compliance a little bit, is that we have 18 different products that are yours to use for free. And these are top-of-the-line products, whether it's a CMR or CRM. We have flyer generating software. I mean, have you gone into our suite, our marketplace, and seen everything that's in there? If you use one of our products to generate anything, you are in the clear, because we've already approved the content and the form that it's going out in. So I would say, if you're trying to sort of reinvent the wheel, go back to our suite and just see, you might be paying somebody something that we already have for free, and that you know is going to be compliant. Okay? So that's just a little promo for our education and market department.
So maybe the disclaimers at the bottom of those flyers that you create, we would want to maybe copy that little disclaimer.
You can get it right out of the rule set. If you go and download our rules, which are available to you, it's Rule 12.9, and you just cut and paste that onto your flyers. That's your disclaimer, and that's fine. It also has the same, it has the rule, the requirements for the attribution. So it's all 12.8, 12.9, pretty clear. And 12.8.1 also. Okay, so it's a lot, right? I've covered a lot. I wanted to do photos, but this generally, naturally flows into these other things. So hopefully I've given you enough information to not be thoroughly confused. I would invite you to come into our chat at any point and talk with our analysts. If you have questions up front about anything, exclusion forms, we'll try to talk you through things. It's certainly the place where you talk to us about your citations and violations and all that good stuff. Why do I not allow my folks to take phone calls from you? What do you think? You want to use your dazzling powers of persuasion and salesmanship. No, the volume-wise, we could never do it. The chat is also very effective because it's a transcript. If there's ever any question of what we've told you, you can upload attachments. We can send you links. I can view it. My manager can view it. We can get involved and help you out in the context of the chat. I know when you're emotional, you want to talk to somebody. But for their own protection, I cannot allow that. No, it's just the way we do it. But email is also good too, because what we are doing is an investigation and enforcement, so we really need everything in writing. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. Yeah. I'll be back as soon as you ask me to come back here. No, you can start out on our website and get as much information as you can process. But I will go, or Megan, our manager, will go anywhere. As long as you put 10 to 15 people in the room, I'll come and do a full-blown compliance A to Z. I've talked at hundreds of brokers' offices. I mean, I love doing education. I believe that's the answer to most of these conflicts that we get into. Push your broker. We'll get you a presentation, no charge. We'll come out. Cost you a cup of coffee. Okay? Anything else? All right, I've taken enough time out of your day. I think you should talk to these very important people here. The photographers, they've got a lot of good things to say to you. And I'll hang around afterwards. Any other questions you guys want to talk to me, be my guest. Okay?
Hi,
Need help with that?
I might. If anyone needs a little intermission, please feel free while we switch
Couple minutes,
computers.
we gotta switch computers. Yeah, where did he go? Because I know I need to get you,
Does that clicker work with this, or just, is that yours?
you have a USB?
I don't.
No, because it comes with this little thing right here, see?
That's okay.
I'm sorry.
No worries. No worries.
Good. Well, when, does it, does it click through to anything? Oh, yeah, he's got it connected, or disconnected. I'll just shut off the Wi-Fi. I'm sorry, let me finish this up and we'll talk about it. Disconnected. He needs to come in here and get you hooked up. Where did he go?
Eric, paging Eric. Not so hear us.
I'll go see if I can go. I'll be back. I'm going to try to help her get hooked up. Okay, I just need to get her going.
This was wireless, and I hooked into the VGA, but it's not showing up.
So, this was wireless? Can you wireless?
I just don't know how. Eric set it up. I'll be back. He's setting it up. Thank you. Hi. Oh, like magic.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you. Okay, we're ready when everybody is. We'll give you a minute to settle back in. Okay, so we're getting close to 2, so I'm just going to jump in. I'm Brenna Humphreys. My partner, Stephen Royce, and I are the owners of Walkthrough Productions and Select South Bay. And I realize we're getting close to the end, so I'll kind of speed through, and then if you guys have any questions, I'm here to just help you on the photography side of things, unless you've all been too terrified to ever take another photo again after hearing about all these fines. I like to start all of my presentations with a little South Bay snippet because I'm enjoying Select South Bay so much and learning about the area. So did you guys know, happy Earth Day, by the way, did you guys know that the beaches actually get a report card just like your kids? Anybody knows? Do you guys know what Redondo Beach is getting today? A+? Yay! You can always go to beachreportcard.org if you're curious about what the beach report is, to check the beaches. So, all right, on to photography. So today I'm just going to speed through drones, talking a little bit about drones and regulations, how to get great photos, where to put them, and then any questions that you might have. Drones. So aerial photography, there are times that it is extremely helpful, especially when we're talking about the issues that we talked about earlier with showing off the view and proximity to things in the community. So showing off an area around the house, for example, this beautiful home right on Redondo Beach, you couldn't demonstrate that without aerial. So it's a very helpful way to show, especially around the beach. It's a great way to show the lot size as well. A number doesn't mean much. If you can actually see it in context, that's really helpful. And then, of course, any special locations. I mean, it's so much about the beach here, but parks, schools, that kind of thing to show. But you do need to know the rules. You must please use a licensed pilot for drones. It's very tempting to use your 12-year-old nephew, but the fines are just not anything you want to deal with. Your certified pilot will know that you can go 400 feet maximum in the air. You do not want to go higher than that. That should be fine, 400 feet. You want to stay 25 feet at least away from people. And the pilot must always have a visual line of sight. There are airspace regulations also that are getting hairier. The drones actually won't even take off when you're too close to the airport these days. That's something to check out in advance with your pilot. They can look it up and see whether the property is within the right area. People get a little nervous about drones sometimes. You might notice the neighbors complain, people get upset at times because they don't understand it. So we think this is a great way actually to do a little bit of lead capture even. Before you go and shoot, it's a great chance to go and knock on doors around the property. Warn people about the date and time you're going to be doing your drone session. Let them know that you're only focusing on the property. You're not looking at them in the shower or their kids in the backyard. You're focused on the property. And there might be a little bit of noise, but it lasts about 20 minutes. So really, if they know that ahead of time, they're going to be very grateful for that. And they might even think about selling their own house, so it's worth asking. Here's just some creative uses of drone photography. This is a nice ad here that shows proximity. We do this with video too sometimes. It's a really great way to show where everything is. It's also kind of considered a tripod in the sky. I think we were talking about condos earlier, right? If you need an exterior shot, the drone is a great way to position the camera exactly to that property or to show off your balcony or your roof deck, all those things that you can't show regularly. Okay, so how do you get great photos? It starts with scheduling. You don't want to schedule around your hair appointment or your nail appointment. You want to schedule for the light, and you want to consider things like, when are the landscapers coming to your property? When is the housekeeper coming? What are the trash days? Those are all things you want to take into consideration when you schedule. I know you want to get everything up and running quickly, but you also want really great photos that are going to last. It's a really good idea to give your clients a staging list ahead of time so that they can prepare the property. There are things that you think of that your clients just might never even consider, putting away those pet toys and the bowls of dog water and things like that. You know, they just don't see them anymore, so it's a good idea for you to let them know ahead of time. We offer a staging checklist that we send ahead of time so that people can use that. And then give your photographer a shot list. You might be assuming that they're going to get that great fireplace, but it might not be something that they notice when they're there. So if you give them a list ahead of time, you're really setting yourself up for a great photo shoot. And of course, you want to talk with your photographer about delivery, timing, and the method of delivery ahead of time. That way you're not getting any surprises at the last minute when you need to load things into the MLS. You want to know, are you going to get it in 24 hours, or are you going to have it in time for that deadline that you have for your ad? Talk about that ahead of time. The day of the shoot. Arrive early, please. Check the house. Make sure that everything looks the way you want. Towels are straight. Bedding is not all wrinkly. The kids didn't, jump on the bed before school. Remove trash cans, toilet plungers. Make sure the blinds are all even. Just little things like that really give you quality photos. And what I like to do is when I arrive at a shoot, when I walk into a room, I kind of turn my eyes into cameras and scan. And if there's something that jumps out at me, that's something you want to pay attention to. It might be a good thing, or it might be a bright red, pair of pants under the floor, or something like that. You want to check all those things ahead of time. And then when your photographer's there, point out those shots. Make sure that they get those special things that are really important to you that you know are great selling points. Angles are so important, and your photographer will know this, but it's a good idea for you to have an understanding as well. The angle that you choose will make a huge difference in how big the room looks, whether you're getting the right details and information about that room. The top photo makes it look very small. The lower photo, much bigger, and you get a little more information. You get the view, you get the photos and the rug, all the good details of the room. The height is also important. You want to make sure that you get that camera above counter height so that you're getting as much information there as possible. And minimize the ceiling unless it's really interesting. You want to make sure that you're getting the room and focusing on all the great details about that room. There are some things we can do after the shoot to correct things. We can't fix the weather, unfortunately, but we can brighten the sky a little bit. We can add a little bit of blue at times. We can even actually turn a daylight shoot into a twilight shoot in Photoshop. We can add fires and fireplaces. We can put TVs in the screens. We can correct little things like spots, or we can remove cars or trash bins. That's going to take some time. Anything you can correct ahead of time is better. But it is, if you get stuck, if the neighbor just left their car in the driveway, sometimes that can be removed. But you'll want to, again, talk to your photographer about that. We don't want any advertising violations. How's that? Better? Sorry, guys. Should I start at the beginning? No. Okay. So I was just talking about different things that can be corrected after the shoot to make the photos even better. We don't want to get into any, violations, though. Don't take that wall out that you don't like or anything like that. It's there, it's there. Do you guys know about HDR photography? High dynamic range. Anybody? This is something to be aware of, that these are two different photographs of the same room taken at different times of day. In the first one, we're exposing more for the outside of the room. All the way up through the last one, we're exposing more for the inside. You guys don't want photos with blown out windows. You want to show, especially around here, you want to show those views. But when we merge all of those together, then you get a great photo that's balancing the inside with the outside. And here's how it comes out. So this is the daytime, and this is the sunset time. And you'll notice in both you can see all the beautiful details in the room, but you can also see the great view outside. Questions so far? Yes?
So, for the daytime and nighttime photos, is that one price for both, or are you charging separately?
We do charge a little extra for twilight, only because we have to have our photographers come in after regular hours. And sometimes it tends to be a longer day that way. But also, if we do digital enhancements, that's a little bit less. So we'll just take a daylight photo and we can turn it into a twilight. It looks pretty amazing, actually. Okay, speeding through. What should you do with these great photos when you have them and all these great marketing materials? Well, you're definitely not done. You want to make sure that it gets seen in as many places as you can. So obviously, your website, you're going to want to make sure you get it over to your broker for the broker's website. When you do print ads, make sure that you're giving some sort of call to action to go online, and so people can see your website, learn all about the property, and get all that information, and more importantly, contact you. Social media, very, very important. You're going to want to get those photos out there, and not just the exterior. You might want to show some details. Tease the house a little bit, get some little details out there. You can boost your posts online through social media. You can also buy ads. Facebook has been cracking down a little bit, as you guys know, and changing some of their rules. But that's more to prevent exclusion. They're still going to allow you to target and get people interested in your property that are in the right area. If you have an email newsletter, really important to keep that database up and send that information out. And then get creative. Think about your community. If it is an equestrian property and it's an area that has an equestrian group, they might be interested. Send that property over to them. Make sure they see your photos and your videos. And then, of course, Inside Opens. Do you guys all get Inside Opens? That's our newsletter that we send out to all of the brokers' opens in Palos Verdes, Redondo Beach, PV, and Hermosa, Manhattan. So you can go to insideopens.com and sign up for that. And that way, if you miss the broker's opens, you can see what's available. So another place that you can put your photos is the interactive floor plan. Now, this is something that is actually very useful, especially what we were talking about earlier. This one is branded, but you'll get an unbranded version as well. And this is a fantastic way to get your listing seen, and you can put your photos into it as well. If it will link for me, I can show you. Okay, so this is the iGuide, interactive floor plan. So you'll see you can walk around and see a lot more details than you would in just one photograph. These dots here are actually camera points, so you can see where the camera was placed, and you can quickly jump around to those different areas of the home. Now, people really like this because it's really easy to follow. And people tend to spend 3 to 4 minutes online, which is kind of unheard of for a website. But it's because it's self-directed. It's because they can choose what they want to see. They can spend as much time in whatever area of the house is most interesting to them. And it also serves almost like a self-contained website. You'll see up there that there's actually a place to put your photos. in a gallery. If you have a video, you can include your video there. And then you have details and a map. So another great place to put your photos, and very MLS compliant. All right, let me just finish up the presentation here. If I can get it to come back. Okay. So finally, the place that you want to make sure that your photos are is a new site that we have created called selectsouthbay.com. This is a South Bay only property listing portal. So think Zillow meets HGTV, but just for the South Bay. It has all of your listings in there. Everyone who is an association member gets a free profile with all of their information. Next to your listing, the only person you will see is you. Nobody else, just you. And it is packed with South Bay content. Information about schools, information about the cities, information about dog parks and yoga studios and everything that makes a house a home and a lifestyle. So make sure that you sign up for your profile. You get your name, your headshot, your bio, your phone, your email. All your current listings are pulled in. And then you can also add your past listings. So whenever your listing comes up, your face is right next to your listing. Here are some examples of some very lovely faces on our profiles. In May, we'll be adding additional tiers so that you can put in more content and add more to your profiles. But this basic one is like having your own website right there. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Also, Rachel, who is an extremely valuable member of our team and running around snapping photos today, she's going to pass a bag around to grab your business cards if you would like us to sign you up. You can do it yourself on the site, but we'd be happy to sign you up as well. Any questions? Photography? Anything? Marketing? Thank you. Thank you all so much for being here today.